In this video, we're going to plot a graph of y equals x plus 1, and we're going to find the y-intercept of the graph. We'll carry on to the next slide where we have y equals x plus 1, and we're going to plot a graph of this onto the axis you can see appearing. And I'm going to produce a table. And into this table, I'm going to put various values of x and work out what the value of y will be. So I'm going to start off with x being the value 1. And of course, that means that this has got the value 1. But I'm then going to add 1 to it and assign that to y. So y under these circumstances, where x is 1, will be 2. So these form a coordinate position on the graph, which is 1, 2. So I go to where x is 1, and you draw up a line. Then you go to where y is 2, and you draw across a line. And where they cross each other, you put a plotting point. Removing the red lines, I'll now turn my attention to where x is 2, which means this will be 2. And of course, it's 2 plus 1, which is 3. So y will now have the value 3, which you can see floating into position here. Now, what you've got here is a coordinate position to be plotted on the graph. So you come up from the 2 on the x-axis, and you come across from the 3 on the y-axis. And where those lines cross, you put a plotting point. Moving on, we can choose a value where x is 3, which means that this will be 3, plus 1 is 4, so y will be 4, and you can see that floating into position here. Now, what we have with these two is a pair which form a coordinate position on the graph. And of course, that means we're going to draw up from the 3. We are going to draw across from the 4. And where these two red lines cross, we put a plotting point. Now, if we consider each of these plots in turn, we can see that this one is in position 1, 2, where 1 is the x-axis position and 2 is the y-axis position. The next one we're looking at is this one here, and that's where x is 2 and y is 3. And finally, we'll look at the last plot, where you can see x is 3 and y is 4. I'll now remove those coordinate values, and I'm going to draw the graph using the plots as a guide. And you can see that the graph goes straight through all 3 points, and it is an example of a straight line graph. Now I'm going to mark a position between the 3 and the 4 on the x-axis, which is 3.5. And I'm going to ask, what's the value of y when the x-axis has the value of 3.5? Well, what you do here is you draw up from 3.5 as far as the plot, and then you go across to the y-axis, and you look where that crosses, and you can see it's between the 4 and the 5, and in fact that is 4.5. So when x is 3.5, y is 4.5, which makes sense because if you look over here, if this is 3.5 and you add 1 to it, you get 4.5. So y under these circumstances is 4.5, which is exactly what's shown here. At the beginning of the video, we were asked to plot the graph, which we have done, but it also asked what's the y-intercept. So let's move on and have a look at what we mean by the y-intercept. And you can see bouncing into position, we have a circle which is marking the position where the graph crosses the y-axis. And if you look at the point where it crosses, it's at this coordinate position, 0, 1, i.e. it's 0 on the x-axis and 1 on the y-axis. Let's consider the crossing point, and you can see it crosses at 1. Now, this 1 can be seen in the equation as plus 1. Now, this is referred to as the y-intercept. So when you've plotted the graph, you look to where the graph is crossing the y-axis, which will be where x is 0 on the x-axis, and this is referred to as the y-intercept. the value of y when x is 0, in other words. And we can go on to say where the graph crosses the y-axis.